Long before social media and modern conveniences transformed daily life, some communities in America chose a different path. The Amish became known for preserving traditions that had nearly disappeared from the modern world. They farmed the land, raised large families, built strong communities, and passed recipes from one generation to the next. Many of those dishes were never designed for restaurants or cookbooks. They were created to feed hard-working families gathered around the table after long days of work. Tonight, we're exploring 5 forgotten Amish recipes from old America that still tell the story of a simpler way of life. And few Amish recipes became more comforting than a steaming bowl of chicken and noodles shared around a family table. Few dishes represent Amish comfort food better than chicken and noodles. For generations, Amish families relied on simple meals made from ingredients they could raise, grow, or prepare themselves. Life on Amish farms often revolved around hard physical work. Long days were spent tending crops, caring for livestock, preserving food, and maintaining family farms. After hours of labor, families needed meals that were filling, affordable, and capable of feeding many people at once. Chicken and noodles became one of those meals. Unlike modern noodle dishes, the Amish version was built around homemade egg noodles, rolled by hand and cut into thick strips. The process itself became a family tradition. Children often helped in the kitchen while parents and grandparents prepared meals together. The noodles simmered slowly in rich chicken broth alongside tender pieces of chicken until the entire dish became thick, hearty, and deeply comforting. For many Amish families, the smell of chicken and noodles became associated with Sunday dinners, family gatherings, harvest seasons, and cold winter evenings. Unlike restaurant food designed to impress customers, Amish cooking focused on nourishment and community. The goal wasn't elegance, the goal was bringing people together around the table. And perhaps that's why recipes like this survived for generations. To recreate traditional Amish chicken and noodles today, you would need chicken, homemade egg noodles, chicken broth, celery, onion, butter, salt, black pepper. First, cook the chicken until tender before shredding it into small pieces. Prepare the noodles and add them to a large pot of broth along with the vegetables. Allow everything to simmer slowly until the noodles become soft and the broth thickens naturally. Return the chicken to the pot and season to taste. Serve hot with fresh bread and butter. Simple, warm, comforting. A timeless Amish classic that continues to remind people that some of life's best meals are also the simplest. But while chicken and noodles became one of the most beloved meals in Amish homes, another recipe earned a surprising name because it allowed families to create something special using very inexpensive ingredients. Few Amish recipes have a more curious name than poor man's steak. At first glance, the dish sounds almost like a joke. How can something be called steak when it isn't actually steak? But for generations of Amish families, the recipe represented something far more important than its unusual name. It represented resourcefulness. Like many traditional Amish dishes, Poor Nan's steak was created during a time when families had to make every dollar count. The Amish have always been known for living simply. Even today, many Amish communities avoid unnecessary luxuries and place tremendous value on hard work, humility, and self-sufficiency. Historically, large Amish families often lived on farms where money was carefully managed and waste was avoided whenever possible. Expensive cuts of beef were not always practical. A family with 8, 10, or even 12 children needed meals that could feed everyone without exhausting the household budget. Ground beef became the solution. Instead of serving costly steaks, cooks learned how to transform inexpensive ingredients into something hearty, satisfying, and special enough for family gatherings. Over time, poor man's steak became one of the best-known examples of Amish ingenuity in the kitchen. The recipe usually began with ground beef mixed together with crackers, breadcrumbs, eggs, onions, and seasonings. The mixture was shaped into large portions that resembled steaks before being baked slowly and covered with rich brown gravy. The result surprised many people. Although it wasn't a traditional steak, it offered the same sense of comfort and satisfaction that families often associated with a hearty, meat-centered meal. For many Amish households, recipes like this became especially important during the colder months of the year. Winter in Pennsylvania, Ohio, and Indiana could be long and demanding. Snow covered the fields, farm work became more difficult, and families spent more time gathered indoors around warm kitchens and dining tables. Outside, horses stood quietly near barns while snow drifted across open fields. Inside, supper brought everyone together after a long day of work. Unlike modern convenience foods, Amish cooking rarely focused on speed. Meals were often prepared slowly and intentionally. Recipes were passed down from parents to children and from grandparents to grandchildren. Many families relied on handwritten recipe cards that remained in use for decades. And because Amish communities place strong importance on family meals, dishes like poor man's steak became more than food. They became traditions. Even today, visitors to Amish country are often surprised by how popular the recipe remains. Restaurants, community dinners, church gatherings, and family kitchens continue to serve versions of the dish throughout Amish communities. Not because it is expensive, not because it is fashionable, but because it works. It feeds people, it brings families together, and it reflects values that have remained remarkably consistent across generations. To recreate traditional Amish poor man's steak today, you would need ground beef, crackers or breadcrumbs, eggs, onions, milk, salt, black pepper. For the gravy, beef broth, flour, butter, black pepper. First, combine the ground beef, crushed crackers, eggs, onions, milk, and seasonings in a large bowl. Shape the mixture into large rectangular portions and place them inside a baking dish. Bake until cooked through and lightly browned. Meanwhile, prepare the gravy by combining butter, flour, and beef broth until smooth and thick. Pour the gravy over the meat and continue baking for a short time until everything becomes rich and flavorful. Serve with mashed potatoes, buttered vegetables, or homemade bread. Simple, hearty, comforting. A classic Amish recipe that transformed inexpensive ingredients into a meal capable of feeding an entire family. And maybe that's why poor man's steak still feels timeless today, because behind its unusual name lies a lesson that Amish communities have understood for generations. Good food isn't measured by how much it costs, it's measured by the people gathered around the table. But while poor man's steak showed how Amish families could transform inexpensive ingredients into a satisfying meal, another recipe became famous because almost every family seemed to have its own version, passed down through generations and served during the most important gatherings of the year. Few dishes are closely connected to Amish family gatherings than potato filling. To an outsider, the name might sound simple, maybe even ordinary. But for generations of Amish families, potato filling has been far more than a side dish. It has been a tradition, a holiday favorite, and a recipe that often appeared whenever large families gathered around the table. To understand why potato filling became so important, it helps to understand Amish life itself. For centuries, Amish communities have emphasized family, faith, hard work, and togetherness. Large family gatherings have always played an important role in community life. Church services were often followed by shared meals. Holidays brought extended families together. Weddings could feed hundreds of guests. And throughout all of those events, certain recipes became expected parts of the table. Potato filling was one of them. The recipe is believed to have roots in Pennsylvania Dutch cooking, which heavily influenced Amish food traditions. The Pennsylvania Dutch were German-speaking settlers who arrived in America during the 1700s and brought many of their culinary customs with them. Over time, those traditions evolved into the food culture that many people today associate with Amish communities. Unlike stuffing, which relies primarily on bread, the potato filling combines bread and mashed potatoes into one rich, comforting dish. The result is soft, hearty, and deeply satisfying. For families feeding large groups of people, it was also practical. Potatoes were inexpensive, bread was readily available, and the combination created a dish capable of feeding many mouths without requiring costly ingredients. In Amish communities, practicality has always mattered. Recipes were often judged not by appearance, but by usefulness. Could the dish feed a large family? Could it be prepared using ingredients already available on the farm? Would people enjoy it after a long day of work? Potato filling passed every test. The preparation itself often became part of family traditions. Children helped peel potatoes. Parents prepared vegetables. Grandparents shared stories while meals were assembled in busy kitchens. The sounds became familiar. Knives chopping celery and onions, pots of potatoes boiling on the stove, fresh bread being torn into pieces, conversations drifting through the room while family members worked together. Outside, life on the farm continued as usual. Barn chores needed to be completed. Animals needed care. Fields required attention. But inside the kitchen, meals like potato filling created moments where everyone slowed down and gathered together. For many Amish families, the dish became especially connected to Thanksgiving, Christmas, church gatherings, and wedding celebrations. Large baking dishes covered entire tables. Relatives traveled long distances to spend time together, and recipes that had been used for generations continued to appear year after year. One of the reasons potato filling survived for so long is because it represents something larger than food. It represents continuity, a connection between generations, a reminder that some traditions are worth preserving. Even today, many Amish families continue preparing potato filling using recipes passed down through handwritten notebooks and family cookbooks. Visitors who travel through Amish country often discover that nearly every family has its own version. Some add more celery, some use different breads, others include herbs or additional vegetables. No two recipes are exactly alike, and yet they all remain recognizable as the same beloved dish. The smell itself is unforgettable. Butter melting into vegetables, fresh bread absorbing flavor, warm potatoes blending together into a rich, comforting mixture. The aroma fills the entire house and signals that a special meal is about to begin. To recreate traditional Amish potato filling today, you would need potatoes, bread cubes, celery, onions, butter, chicken broth, parsley, salt, and black pepper. First, peel and boil the potatoes until tender. Mash them lightly before setting them aside. Meanwhile, sauté the onions and celery in butter until softened and fragrant. Combine the vegetables with the potatoes, bread cubes, broth, and seasonings. Mix thoroughly until everything is evenly incorporated. Transfer the mixture into a baking dish and bake until the top becomes lightly golden while the inside remains soft and moist. Serve alongside roasted chicken, turkey, ham, or other traditional family meals. Warm, comforting, familiar. A timeless Amish classic that has brought families together for generations. And maybe that's why potato filling remains so beloved today, because every spoonful carries more than flavor. It carries memories of holidays, family gatherings, church suppers, and the simple joy of sharing a meal with the people that matter most. But while potato filling became a staple of Amish family gatherings and holiday meals, one dessert became so closely associated with Amish baking that many Americans still travel to Pennsylvania just to taste an authentic slice. Few Amish desserts are surrounded by more curiosity than shoofly pie. The name alone is enough to make people stop and ask questions. What exactly is a shoofly pie? Where did the strange name come from? And why has this humble dessert remained famous for generations while so many other traditional recipes have disappeared? The answers begin in the rolling farmland of Pennsylvania. Long before modern supermarkets and packaged desserts became common, Amish and Pennsylvania Dutch families relied heavily on ingredients that could be stored for long periods of time. Life on the farm required planning. Families often prepared food months in advance. Winters could be harsh, travel could be difficult, and fresh ingredients were not always available. As a result, recipes that used shelf-stable ingredients became incredibly valuable. Molasses was one of those ingredients. Affordable, flavorful, and capable of lasting for long periods without spoiling, molasses became the cornerstone of many Pennsylvania Dutch recipes. And eventually, it became the heart of shoofly pie. The origins of the dessert are still debated today. Some historians believe the recipe evolved from old European crumb cakes brought to America by German-speaking immigrants during the 1700s. Others believe it developed gradually within Pennsylvania Dutch communities as families adapted traditional baking methods to local ingredients. Regardless of its exact origins, by the 19th century, shoofly pie had become deeply woven into the culture of Amish and Pennsylvania Dutch communities. The pie itself was surprisingly simple: a flaky crust, a rich molasses filling, and a crumb topping made from flour, sugar, and butter. Yet somehow those basic ingredients created something unique: sweet, rich, deeply comforting. Unlike fruit pies that depended on seasonal harvests, shoofly pie could be baked nearly year-round. That practicality helped make it a favorite in farm kitchens throughout Pennsylvania. The unusual name has inspired countless stories. One popular explanation suggests that flies were attracted to the sweet molasses filling while pies cooled on windowsills. Bakers supposedly spent their time shooing flies away from the dessert. Whether the story is completely true remains uncertain, but it has become part of the legend surrounding the pie. And perhaps that's fitting, because shoofly pie has always been about more than ingredients. It represents a way of life. Inside Amish homes, baking was often a daily activity. Large families required large amounts of food. Bread, pies, cookies, and cakes regularly emerged from wood-burning ovens. Children learned recipes from parents and grandparents. Techniques were passed down through generations, and desserts like shoofly pie became associated with family gatherings, church events, holidays, and special occasions. The smell itself became unforgettable. Butter mixing into crumb topping, molasses warming gently in the kitchen, fresh pie cooling on wooden counters while conversations filled the room. For many families, those aromas became part of childhood memories. Even today, visitors traveling through Amish country often seek out authentic shoofly pie. Small bakeries, roadside markets, and family-owned shops continue selling versions of the dessert that remain remarkably similar to those baked more than 100 years ago. And despite countless changes in the modern world, the recipe continues to survive. Not because it follows trends, not because it is fashionable, but because people still find comfort in traditions that connect them to the past. To recreate traditional Amish shoofly pie today, you would need, for the filling, molasses, hot water, baking soda. For the crumb topping, flour, brown sugar, and butter. And 1 unbaked pie crust. First, combine the flour, sugar, and butter until a crumbly mixture forms. Set aside a portion of the crumbs for the topping. Next, dissolve the baking soda into hot water before stirring it into the molasses. Pour the molasses mixture into the pie crust. Sprinkle the remaining crumb mixture generously across the top. Bake until the filling is set and the topping becomes golden brown. Allow the pie to cool before serving. Some people enjoy it with coffee, others prefer it completely on its own. Sweet, rich, nostalgic. A beloved Amish classic that has survived generations of change while remaining deeply connected to the farms and families of Pennsylvania Dutch country. And maybe that's why shoofly pie still feels special today. Because every slice offers a small taste of a simpler world, where recipes were measured not by popularity, but by the memories they created around the family table. But while shoofly pie became the most famous Amish dessert, one simple spread found its way onto breakfast tables, pantry shelves, and family recipes throughout Amish country for generations. Few foods are more closely connected to Amish kitchens than apple butter. Despite the name, apple butter contains no butter at all. Instead, it is a rich apple spread created by slowly cooking apples for many hours until they transform into a thick, dark, flavorful preserve. For generations, apple butter played an important role in Amish life. Before refrigeration became common, families needed reliable ways to preserve food for the winter months. Apple orchards were common throughout Pennsylvania and other Amish communities, producing large harvests every autumn. Rather than allowing fruit to go to waste, families turned apples into pies, dried fruit, cider, and apple butter. The process itself often became a community event. Large copper kettles were placed over outdoor fires. Families gathered together. Children played nearby while adults stirred the apples for hours. Stories were shared, neighbors visited, and by the end of the day, jars of apple butter were ready to be stored for the months ahead. For many Amish families, apple butter became a symbol of autumn itself. Cool mornings, colorful leaves, harvest season, and the smell of apples and spices filling the air. The recipe was wonderfully simple: apples, sugar, cinnamon, and patience. Lots of patience. As the mixture cooked slowly, the apples darkened and concentrated into a smooth spread with a deep, rich flavor that could be enjoyed throughout the year. Even today, apple butter remains one of the most recognizable foods associated with Amish country, Visitors often bring home jars from roadside markets and family-owned farms as a reminder of their travels. To recreate traditional Amish apple butter today, you would need apples, brown sugar, cinnamon, cloves, vanilla extract. First, peel and slice the apples before placing them into a large pot. Add the sugar and spices and cook slowly over low heat. Stir regularly for several hours until the apples break down completely and the mixture becomes dark, smooth, and thick. Allow it to cool before transferring it into jars. Serve on toast, biscuits, pancakes, or fresh bread. Sweet, simple, comforting. A timeless Amish tradition that transformed a fall harvest into something families could enjoy all year long. And maybe that's why apple butter still feels special today. Because sometimes the simplest recipes become the ones people remember the longest. Many of these Amish recipes have changed very little over the generations. Some are still prepared in family kitchens much the same way they were 100 years ago. In a world that seems to move faster every year, there is something comforting about that. Chicken and noodles, poor man's steak, potato filling, shoofly pie, apple butter. Simple recipes made from simple ingredients, yet together they tell the story of a community that chose to preserve traditions, family values, and a slower way of life. And maybe that's why Amish cooking continues to fascinate people today. Because these recipes remind us that good food doesn't have to be complicated. Sometimes the meals we remember most are the ones shared around a family table after a long day of work, surrounded by the people we love. Thank you for joining me on this journey through forgotten Amish recipes from old America. And until next time, take care, stay curious, and keep exploring the stories hidden inside the foods of the past.